welcome to the network. Welcome to the Two Dads edition. Wait,
That's not it.
start again.
Two Dads, Gen X edition.
James, speaking of going online,
Yeah.
are you hitting that like and subscribe button?
That is not what you're looking at right there.
Yeah, I know. It's just our
Just kidding.
itinerary.
Just kidding. No, but honestly, if you're liking the content today, if you're liking what we're talking about, I find it interesting. Definitely follow, like, subscribe, and check us out for more content as we keep moving forward in 2026.
Hit that bell. Ding, ding. Hey, Two Dads community. We want to thank you for joining us on this new year. Happy New Year,
Happy
everybody.
New Year, 2026.
We're so excited. Episode 39.
39.
Season 2.
It's crazy.
I know, man.
All right.
We've come a long way. And we actually kind of want to start it off with a bang.
Pun intended.
Unintended. No, we actually really wanted to hit something hard. Now pretty much everything I say is going to lead up
This is
to
going to
it.
make a lot of sense in just a second.
But we really wanted to talk about the effects of pornographic material and OnlyFans on the male mind.
The male mind and on
Emotion,
relationships.
Relationships,
Yeah, that's why that was funny.
We're going to start with a bang.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, did you get any good Christmas presents, like a big bottle of lotion or anything like that? Or
No, my name is not P. Diddy. No, I did get a couple candles. I got a candle for like the mood. It's a Chiefs candle though, so
for yourself?
it's a sad one.
To watch the Chiefs burn on both ends,
Right,
Go
yeah.
Bears.
Yeah.
Just gonna throw that out there.
But your Bears are doing great.
Yeah, not too
That was
bad.
pretty impressive. So no, I didn't. Not really. Just I didn't get much. What about you?
I got all great things, great time with the family and fun stuff like that. But it's all good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we definitely want to talk about the P word. We really want to make sure we focus on helping men and women understand, especially men, understand how that affects the brain neurologically, and then physically and emotionally. Physiologically and emotionally.
Well, and the reality is like this is one of the most misunderstood kind of things in our society because we come from a very dogmatic religious origination, from like the Puritans coming over, right? And this country is set up that way compared to like European countries where they're very, very open.
Yeah.
But there's this really big misunderstanding because it is so widely accepted in our society that people privately will view pornography and adult material, but then there's so much shame and guilt around it too, and so there's these push-pull kind of things because it's having a healthy sex drive is totally healthy and normal.
Yeah.
Especially in a relationship, that's a good thing because it's a connecting thing. But then you take this normal, healthy process and you attach it to a bunch of shame and guilt because of the secrecy and the it's bad and all this kind of stuff, and it can be very, very harmful. Not the sex drive, but the adult material, where it can really screw up people's perceptions of what real relationships are supposed to be like. Anything that is not strictly within this framework is bad and evil and wrong, that kind of thing, and that shame and guilt cycle that gets put in place is actually more detrimental to people's spirituality than the actual problem itself. And if we were more open, if we did talk about it more often, which is part of the reason why we're doing this podcast, because this topic specifically is one that people either absolutely despise or they think is totally acceptable. And one of the things that I think would be important to do is also identify not just like defining what pornography is or that kind of thing, but what addiction is too.
Yeah.
So there's different types of usage. So when people think of porn addiction or sex addiction, things like that, if you think about like alcohol, for example, if somebody drinks alcohol, like a beer once a week, are they an addict?
Oh, the FDA said they are.
If they drink, well, as far as like social or society's interpretation of what an alcoholic is, right? If you have one beer with dinner Friday night, and that's the only thing that you drink, people don't think of that as alcoholism, right?
Correct.
What if you have a beer with dinner every single night? Just one beer.
Well, medically, we consider that alcoholism.
Medically.
Yeah.
Society's standard, though, because society's standard is a lot different than the medical profession and the mental health profession.
I think a lot of it depends on what country you grew up in and your religion.
All right, so you're resisting me on this one.
No, I'm not.
So
my problem is I don't put everything in a box like a lot of society
but that's
does.
the thing, is that this topic,
Yeah.
people are so eager to put it into a box.
Yeah.
As soon as somebody thinks of you view pornography and adult material, they automatically think of all this horrible, hardcore, whatever stuff, right?
Yeah.
They don't think about, oh, you read romance novels, because that doesn't fit the box. When people think about like pornography addiction, they think that that's all you're looking at all day long, every day, and that how can when you go to the bathroom at work, you're just looking at porn, and all that that's what they think of, right? And so there's levels of usage that has to be brought into the conversation where when we talk about like pornography addiction really speaks more to a compulsive behavior.
Right.
And so there's pornography use, and then there's pornography addiction, and it's categorized in sex addiction too. But that compulsive behavior where it's like, that's what you need to do, that's what you have to do, and you're seeking opportunities for it, rather than like, the person, like, they have a beer with dinner. There's a lot of people that report that when they use pornography, they're using it because they're bored, or they just want to relax, or they, that kind of thing. And it's not an everyday thing. It may be once or twice a week. Maybe it's something they do before bed, and still not healthy for them necessarily, but it's also not addiction in the sense that we normally think of addiction. But this topic is one of the topics that in our society, we jump on the bandwagon of people are evil and wrong and disgusting as soon as it's found out that they view pornography. There's either the, oh no, everybody does it, or you're sick.
Yeah, and I think I think that people don't realize that's the main focus of it. Is they think, and it does ruin relationships, and we'll explain why. And I think when people understand all the effects of it and how it works on the brain, your physical part and your sexual behaviors and the emotional behaviors of it all, then you start to understand it's like, oh, okay, this is my part contributing to lack of intimacy in my relationship. This is why I don't have a drive. This is why I don't give a crap about things, because I don't think people realize continual porn usage hijacks your brain.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
And we'll get through that and kind of help you understand that part of it. And so basically we'll jump into it. I know you wanted to share a story kind of like with your last relationship, and I'll share mine on kind of how porn affected us and how it
it's one of those,
we're shamed and also helped destroy, on our side of it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, and we'll get into this a little bit more later, but so like common story, I was exposed at a very young age. Not like anybody like showed it to me. I was walking home from elementary school. I was like 7 years old, and there were some papers in a bush, and I was like, "What's that?" And I pull it out, and it's pages from an adult magazine. That was my first exposure, and I curious, and so that kind of like drove me into trying to figure out what is this thing that I just saw.
Yeah.
And it became a problem over the years, that interfered with my first marriage big time. Not in the sense that like I was hiding it all the time and she was offended, all that kind of stuff, because she would view it too. My kids probably don't know that, but but it was, and this is what commonly happens is there was a whole lot of like shame and disgust and guilt and pushing away and all this other stuff. And so that's where I started this conflict of a healthy sex drive. I'm very, very interested and want that in a relationship, but then basically made to feel like I was wrong and disgusting because of that.
Yeah.
And it unfortunately in that relationship, intimacy became used as a tool to manipulate and control. And then for a long, long time, for many years, as I was trying to work on overcoming this issue, it when you have this shame and guilt around any kind of addiction or anything like that, it actually drives you further into the addiction.
Yeah, yeah. I think people don't realize that.
No, they don't. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a therapist that I know that works with addiction a lot. I don't work with a ton of addiction. I work with a lot of trauma, but um, there was a couple that came in and she was disgusted by him looking at porn, all this other stuff. She's like, "Yeah, I don't want to touch you. I don't want to look at you. This and that." And the therapist goes, "So you're the one. So you are pushing him further into the addiction. You're enabling him further."
Yeah.
And she was shocked that the therapist would say that. It's like, actually, unintended consequences, yeah, you are forcing him into it. Not forcing it, but the way that you shame and guilt it is just making it worse.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, as we explain on the neurological side of it, I
Mhm.
mean, basically he's getting that positive reinforcement from the porn and the dopamine release,
Yeah.
and then she's giving the negative reinforcement to push him towards it more. It's
Yeah.
like, well, I'm telling you this is what I need, and you don't like it, so I'm going to go back to this kind of thing, and it becomes a cycle. And I've seen that with my patients with alcohol and drug use, and I actually recently, like 3 weeks ago, we actually had someone in the hospital for actual porn addiction, to the point that he actually was becoming more assaulting towards
Mhm.
women and more aggressive
That's
towards
horrible.
women, which is one of the kind of a side effects of continual porn use. And
It can be.
so it's kind of funny is they were treating him for that.
Yeah,
And they were
right?
just like, we're trying to get you off of this. And it was just kind of alcohol and other stuff. And so, and it was just interesting to see with the patients that the families that shame them and push them into trying to get recovery, they want it even more, because
Yeah.
it's like it feeds that disappointment, low self-esteem, and frustration, and they want pleasure, and so they go back into it more and more and more because they're trying to get something good in their life, and
Well,
unfortunately it
and the thing
hijacks
is,
the brain like
it's
that.
not pleasure that they're seeking.
It's that dopamine release.
It's the dopamine
Yeah.
release. It's almost like what would be a good way to say it? So and it's like anything, like drugs, alcohol, it's gambling, food, all that kind of stuff. There's a reward that you get when you satisfy that urge, and so it's not necessarily that they're seeking sex; they're seeking that
Release, yeah.
chemical release, that reward. And the problem is like the term chasing the dragon, right? It's like people who are using heroin or something like that. They don't get the same high as they keep on using as they did in the very beginning, and so they're constantly trying to seek out that kind of sensation again.
Yep.
That's where they can devolve into going much further into much darker, illegal,
Stuff like
horrible behavior. Um, but let's talk about like what
that.
actually happens in the brain.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So neurologically and the brain effects. And basically, you want to talk about how porn hijacks the reward system in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So medically, frequent pornographic use, OnlyFans, basically hijacks the brain's reward system, causing that dopamine spike, which is
Mm-hmm.
very similar to addiction.
Yeah.
And so when we ask, what is that brain reward system? A lot of people don't realize, that system's basically called the mesolimbic system. It's broken down into 3 sections. The ventral tegmental area, that's what actually releases the dopamine and GABA and glutamate. But we were focusing more on the dopamine on here because that's really what porno just releases so much of it.
Mm-hmm.
The part that receives that dopamine is your nucleus accumbens, and then the part that actually processes it, the decision making, the planning, goal directing behavior, is that frontal cortex.
So great. That's all Greek.
Yeah.
So how would you describe that in non-medical common man? We're not in the medical profession terms.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, when you do something pleasurable, you eat food, exercise, social interaction, sex, that dopamine is released, GABA is released, those chemicals are released. It's basically kind of a want versus like scenario. Dopamine drives the want. It drives that motivation, that craving, the I need it kind of thing. Where the like is more the pleasure, and so the pushing you to seek that more reward out kind of thing. And so we basically take that, and it's kind of a learning, reinforcing behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the brain then links that pleasure to that action. So it's creating a positive reinforcement.
Yeah, feedback loop.
When you get that loop.
Yeah.
And so you're like, well, I really want to do that. The weird thing about porn, the graphic material, OnlyFans, stuff like that, is it triggers an unnatural, amount released that's not normal for the brain.
Yeah.
So it's a naturally high, and it sustains longer than normal. And so you're kind of on this euphoric, yay, which technically was meant to be when you're intimate with someone,
Mm-hmm.
you're getting that intimate connection that technically your brain is releasing it specifically for your partner. So you have a higher craving for your individual partner, that person that you are having a relationship with. And so that's kind of where pornographic material hijacks the brain, because it's basically making you thinking you're falling in love with this imagery.
Yeah, it becomes this chemical, emotional connection with the person that you're with, but in this case, it's artificial.
Yeah. So then it drives that need to crave, consume more, abuse it, get to the point that if you're one of those people that's just kind of a sloth, you're laying around, you're bored, and then you watch porn, you get that hit, and you're kind of like, it's kind of nice, but then you throw alcohol and other things in there, you're just basically becoming I don't want to say a slug, but you're kind of becoming this slug that's just kind of forever happy, but you're really not.
Yeah, but you're really not, because you're not actually getting that connection. And there are a lot of different studies out there that have investigated pornography use and sex and addiction and all that kind of stuff, because it's very, very, I mean, it's an addictive cycle. There's a saying in my profession where the opposite of addiction is connection.
Yeah.
And this is an artificial connection, but it's not fulfilling because it's not the real thing. But again, it's like it hijacks a natural, normal process that is a huge beneficial process for relationships that help build connection. It helps build that commitment and that love and that trust with one another, and it hijacks that in an artificial way that becomes very, very harmful.
Well, yeah, and in a lot of this stuff, countless studies. I know in my marriage, when we were really struggling with intimacy and having that connection, and of course that's kind of where I went down my rabbit hole. It's like, okay, well, I'm lonely. I'm not getting anything I need. I'm not getting just holding hands, nothing. And so I was getting that connection from watching it, and it's like I noticed the pattern of any huge fight we would have.
Yeah,
I have just this need to go do that.
Yeah,
to kind of like feel better about the fight that we just had, kind of stuff, and just the pattern didn't help us at all.
No,
kind of thing, and so as I was doing my research, trying to figure out how to get that connection back, one was stop watching it.
Yep.
Stop doing it, and over time you're gonna start seeing the value of your partner again. But a lot of those studies shows that if you need daily intimacy, and it's just not, we're not talking about sex every day. It's just like holding hands, the touch, compliments,
snuggling,
yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is,
yeah.
Go ahead, please.
But they did say flat out that the couples that were intimate in the bed around every 3 days, they had the stronger bond, higher forgiveness, higher understanding of each other, and just had just a better physical and emotional connection.
Yeah, and that's why the way that somebody reacts to finding out that their partner uses porn, if they both don't, because there are a lot of couples where they both use it, it's not necessarily a good thing. Two consenting adults, so as long as both people are consenting and on board and all that kind of stuff, got it. But in a lot of marriages, it's a lot of relationships, men obviously use porn more than women.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because it's the type of porn that's used. So men, it's typically video, pictures, things like that. For women, it can be videos too, but they do a lot of like fan fiction and fantasy novels. I mean, how many women did you ever see when 50 Shades of Grey came out?
Yeah. It's like, oh, my life got so much better with
Right,
it.
yeah. But
Our
it's
relationship got more intimate. And I'm like, well, yeah, because you're literally wanting to do all this stuff you just read in the
yeah.
book.
Well, and that comes to another point where it's like, how do you define pornography, right?
Yeah,
A lot of people only associate videos and pictures with pornography, and that is not the case.
correct.
Um, Anything that stimulates the brain to release that dopamine, that stimulates a sexual reaction, any format,
Yeah.
is pornography. So the fan fiction, romance novels, anything like that, anything that kind of stimulates that is pornography. It's pornographic. If it doesn't have to be illicit to do that either, and that's one of the interesting things with the statistics. So one is that the greatest number of people that ingest pornography are between the ages of 18 and 35.
Yeah.
And then the second group is over 65.
Oh, well, yeah, they're all divorced, lonely men.
But the interesting thing, one of the things that I found that was very interesting is that when because men and women will view like videos and stuff like that, women actually view like the video pornography longer than men do, by like 45 seconds longer.
45 seconds. It just took 45 more seconds.
Right. But it's it's just kind of interesting where women use it less, but they watch it longer.
Yeah. Well, and then this is kind of like the physiological and the emotional parts of porn and how it affects that. And, and I think the big thing is, I don't think guys realize that continual porn use actually reduces your libido.
It does, yeah.
It's like that drive to be with a real partner. And you'll actually see, and it's like, yeah, I don't know why. And it's like, well, men are visually stimulated.
Yeah.
That's why that the memes and the jokes that when the wife takes her shirt off, they're just like, and it's a playful kind of fun thing where you're just like staring to be funny, but there is truth to that. There's so much truth to how fun, playful relationship utilizes that.
Oh yeah,
and they utilize each other's the male part of stimulation and the female stimulation. Quality time for females, visualization for males. You combine those, you can have a great relationship, and I think that's what's lost on a lot of people.
Yeah, and one of the harmful things that pornography does is that it creates this artificial expectation of what is supposed to be.
Yeah, that's where the self-esteem comes in.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's sad because you kind of see that a lot with people that are just lonely, that really have a hard time with that mental connection, and people don't realize that continual use of that actually creates more anxiety, creates depression, causes you to be more withdrawn. You're less likely to try to interact with people for fear of it not going the way you want. It's like, I dropped my wrench.
That's mostly a stereotype, though, is that it's lonely people that are looking at pornography.
Well, right, but you're seeing the pattern of.
But it's not that either, because you look at like the frat bro, right?
Yeah.
But it's the problem that pornography creates is it creates this unrealistic expectation of what a woman is supposed to look like, the way a man is supposed to look, how they're supposed to perform, and so you have these. Now the studies are like 18 and older because ethically and legally they're only allowed to research for 18 and older for the most part. But the age that people are starting to consume and be exposed to pornography is getting younger and younger.
Yeah.
Where you've got 14, 15, 16-year-old kids who they're looking at that stuff and they think that that's what is supposed to be normal. And so you have women who, there are no perfect bodies, quote unquote, right? All bodies are beautiful, but then you look at these fit people that are that's the expectation.
That are gym rats.
Yeah. And if you don't look like them, then there's a lot of body shaming and a lot of whatever the term is. Was that?
I would say defecation. That's shitting on yourself.
Deprecation. Yeah. Self-deprecation. But like, you start comparing yourself and you have body image issues where it's like, oh, I'm not pretty enough. I'm not sexy enough. And sometimes that can translate into somebody thinking that they have to perform like a porn star so that they can be in a relationship because they're not going to get somebody unless they do. or guys where it's like they're supposed to be massive and make a girl orgasm like 5 or 6 times in 10 minutes because otherwise they're not good enough.
Yeah.
And so it creates this very, very unrealistic expectation of what the reality of intimacy really is. And intimacy is not what porn shows.
Well, and it really does. It creates like when you're seeing it at a younger age, before your brain's still developing,
Mm-hmm.
those neurotransmitters are still kind of doing what they're supposed to be doing. Your brain's developing its release of the dopamine production, the GABA production. It's trying to regulate those things to
Mm-hmm.
help you have motivation to learn, to be more effective, to be focused, to drive those interactions and connect with people. And so when you start seeing that, especially in adolescence, is it shows that it impacts his sexual behavior, their attitude, the risk for promiscuous sexual practices,
Yeah.
and a decrease of interaction with people. And what really scares me, and actually Elon Musk has talked about this, is the fall of society is not going to be overpopulation, it's going to be underpopulation, and we've really seen it in the last 10 years.
Oh yeah.
And now you're throwing in
What, China got rid of their one-child policy because their population was starting to drop?
Yeah, I mean, like Japan literally had the same birth rate they had in 1886, and that's not
Yeah.
good.
No, it's not.
And so you're like, holy crap! And so you start adding in an actual sex bot with the visual part of it.
Yeah.
Men are screwed. Like, and women don't understand.
No
that,
pun
like,
intended.
I mean, it's going to be complete hijacking the brain, 100%.
Yeah.
You're actually throwing a mental visual connection to a robot that looks really real. I mean, I was looking like, okay, who can I invest stock in, because I'm going to be a billionaire if I can find the right company that takes off with this kind of thing. And
I
it's
don't
just,
know if I want to be wealthy because of the destruction of our society.
I'll be dead. I don't care.
Then it doesn't matter if you're wealthy or
I've
not.
moved on. 100 years, nothing matters. I'll be just a dust in the wind, and nobody will even know my name, kind of thing. But it's just sad because the emotional side of it. I remember my very first exposure to it was National Geographic. You open up the page and you see boobs, you're like, woohoo! You're like, why is it like that? Why are we in America shamed like this? A lot of women reported just using it to learn, to educate. I've seen couples that actually, I've been in counseling where they recommended, well, if you're not good at that and you're not getting what he's trying to tell you, go watch some videos of them doing that so you can get a better understanding of that.
Yeah.
I mean, why do you think the Hawk 2 girl took off so much?
Right.
Because she literally said the one thing that works. Kind of thing. And I don't want to dive too much into that. But it's like, or they're bored or they needed to relax. I mean, I had a good friend of mine that she's like, I get so stressed, that's the only way I can relax. Well, because she's getting that dopamine hit to release and stress.
And that's where it becomes a problem if the usage is the thing that you have to go to for the relaxation, for the release, for the connection, all that kind of stuff. Because there's a lot of couples where it's like they use pornography to kind of get things going, but they don't have an intimate relationship without the pornography. I think that becomes the boundary. That becomes a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, they're consenting adults, do what you do, but if that's the thing, then what?
Well, that's kind of like the guy that's like, oh, I'm having a hard time getting it up, erectile dysfunction. And you go to the doctor to take a pill to medically force it to happen. But then you're like, oh, let's put on this. And you're trying to find a certain one. And it becomes a double-edged sword because let's say you have a spouse that's like, okay, yeah, I want to make you happy.
Right.
Well, then let's say you're putting on 300-pound specific race, and she's like this, 97-pound little girl, woman, woman. That person's going to start wondering, like, oh, do you really like big girls? Is that not me?
So do you not like me? And that causes problems too.
A huge disassociation because she's seeing you like one thing, but you can't get it up for her. When really the fact of the matter is you're using a stimulant to get going to just hopefully finish with the person that you supposedly love and want to be with.
Yeah.
And studies have shown, like most addiction, 28 days, you're out of it, the brain resets, and you start working on the healing and like go for a walk together,
Yeah.
hug each other in the morning, kiss goodbye. The small things that will rebuild that connection, because you need the oxytocin, the dopamine, the GABA, serotonin, all those things that make you feel happy.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And building a relationship with your partner where that is what is normal in the relationship becomes essential. And anytime, and here's the problem with an addiction kind of like pornography or a sex addiction, something like that. As soon as, if you've been building and building and it's getting better and better, and as soon as there is and this is not to suggest that relationships should be held captive by people's moods,
Yeah.
but as soon as there's that rejection or that shaming, guilting, all that kind of stuff, remember the default is that triggers the addiction again.
Yeah.
Because it's not a chemical addiction, it is a process addiction. It's association. And so if somebody is using that as, this is how I feel good when I feel bad, and you've made them feel bad, and they're going to want to go to the thing that made them feel good. I've heard it described where it's like, it's reliable. It's always there. It's free.
Yeah.
It doesn't take long.
Never says no.
It never says no, and it never makes you feel
Sally
bad.
Palm never says no.
Well, and so when it comes to the relationships, and this is I think a common problem, not like the majority of relationships are like this, but when intimacy becomes transactional in a relationship, you are not helping either party.
Yeah.
Because when you make it transactional, and unfortunately that's it very quickly became that in my first marriage. It felt like, I'm not saying it did, but it felt like that. That unless I did what she asked me to, unless I apologized for whatever the thing was, unless that would be withheld, not sex, but intimacy.
Yeah.
Sex too, but intimacy, right? And so it's like, how is that supposed to be something where I want to be connected and need to be connected and feel that pulled towards my spouse, towards my partner, if I'm being shamed and guilted for everything that they think I'm doing wrong?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much truth to that. Just in my marriage counseling, and then just researching. I mean, because I did so much research on how to find the connection again, and how to do this, and how to be a better spouse, and as a man, how to build that intimacy and that quality time to get that desired effect.
Yeah.
When really you're not trying to win, you're just basically trying to have that beautiful connection that's playful, fun, honest, where you can tell your spouse. Because people don't realize, when you're, what they say, sexually safe with your partner, it doesn't mean you can use chains, whips, dips, candy wax, and stuff like that. It means you are openly like, oh, that really hurt, honey. Like, can you not do that again? And that person's receptive is like, oh, okay, I tried something new, they didn't like it, and they move on. Not, but if you get butt hurt and like,
no pun intended.
Yeah. If you get upset and lash out at your partner for being honest, then that creates I don't feel safe. Well, then that's when that person might start going to porn, or let's, like you say, it's like you have a whole date plan and something goes wrong, and then you punish your spouse, and it could be either way. That's basically damaging to your relationship. That when it becomes a reward punishment system, that's so much more hurtful to the woman.
And I don't want to suggest that, if a partner is using porn, the other one doesn't like it, that they should just go along with it, or that a woman should just accept whatever, or a guy should just accept whatever, because it goes both ways. But recognizing the causes, the patterns, the chemical process in the brain, how it functions. So instead of just reacting to the thing, understanding why it's there to begin with, working together through it. I mean, how bonding could it be if like your partner is addicted to pornography or something like that, you don't like it, but you're actually a support to them as they work through it. How more connected are they going to be to you? Instead of you disgust me, I can't stand you, like that one therapist's client was saying, where it's like, I don't even want to look at you, you're so disgusting.
Yeah.
How is that supposed to help
It's like,
anything?
cool. I want to stay married to you. It's kind
Well,
of
and the thing is when it comes, because again, it's, mostly men are the ones that view pornography in the visual form, mostly women in the written form. But I mean, it's how most men want to overcome it. They want to be connected. They need to be connected, and then to have that pushed away and felt and to be made to feel like they're disgusting, horrible people
yeah.
is it's horrible
Just
to the
It's detrimental to
relationships.
both
Yeah,
people, to both
very much
parties.
so.
And the sad thing is, it feeds into the next one, the next relationship, and the next one, and the next
Yeah.
one. And it's really interesting. Like, we were in sociology class, and our teacher brought up. I think she just said Mandy was the name of the person, and Mandy's whole goal was to Guinness Book World Record of most people in her lifetime, kind of thing. And she goes, let's remove that she does that for a living. Let's just say it's an individual that likes to be very promiscuous, is very sexually active. As society, how do we view that person? Well, the funny thing is like me and a couple other guys that are a little older, we're like, well, our first question is like, what was her past trauma?
Right. Yeah. Right.
And the teacher is like, you guys just nailed it on the head. And it's like, society will go, oh, she's just a whore, she's a
Right.
slut kind of thing.
Again, that guilt and shame.
Or
Right?
that guy's a pimp, he's an F boy kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, what was the trauma to that? What if that girl fell in love, so in love with a guy, and then he just couldn't wait and he date raped her, and then they broke up afterwards?
Yeah.
Guess what? She just was Pavlov to think that I can only be loved if I put out.
And that becomes
And the sad thing is that can be broken. That pattern can be totally broken easily, and just like guys too. Frat boys, or I hate saying frat boys, but like, say a guy that watches a lot of porn, basically doesn't see women as a partner, basically just sees them as a resource. And then let's say he dates somebody that confirms that they're very into it, and let's say they have an open relationship and they're going to parties and stuff like that,
which is never a long-term solution for anything.
And the sad thing, what happens is that has that need to escalate. You always got to escalate the next thing. And it's like people that use a lot of sex toys. You actually numb the body to be receptive to actual human touch.
Yeah.
And it's because you're associating the dopamine release with the actual device instead of with a partner. And so that's where you're starting seeing S&M. You're starting to see torture, mutilation, unsafe practices, pedophilia, crap. People, it's the escalation of addiction can get to the point that it just breaks people.
Yeah. And it's not like just because, and here's one of those associations that our society has. A lot of people think that, if they hear the word addict, right, they immediately go to that very worst case scenario where it's like, no, that's actually not a high percentage of the people. I mean, it's significant.
Yeah.
If you look at like all the people that view pornography, there's about a 10-12% that it's illegal, illicit stuff, which is a lot, unfortunately. But that's not everybody. It's like, just because somebody, it's like associating, well, we won't go down that road, but just because somebody views doesn't mean they view that.
Yeah.
And so, but because people also view that's associated with everybody. It can be anyway. And that becomes a mistake in our society too, where we automatically assume, kind of like a girl who's promiscuous, and the default is, oh, what's her trauma? Sometimes it's not.
I mean, I think that's why with the show Sex and the City, they're trying to show Samantha's character that she just liked it. She enjoyed it. Yeah. She had fun with it. She just couldn't find someone to actually have a long-term connection with. Down the road, it was great character development where she actually did find someone down the road. And if I remember right, I remember seeing all of it. I don't remember anyway. But
I'm just surprised that you saw enough of Sex and the City to know all that.
Well, you're trying to connect with your spouse at the time. They want to watch it, so you watch it with them.
I mean, I didn't watch enough of like Keeping Up with the Kardashians with my first wife to know what the actual Kardashians are into.
Well, you don't even want to keep up with them.
No, I didn't know, and I have an aversion to that kind of reality TV because of it. But
well, it just, but yeah, it just goes to show. But like Entourage, why was Entourage such a good show? Because it was like the male version of Sex and the City,
yeah,
kind of thing. But ultimately, his character was traumatized because the love of his life broke up, didn't work off, and ironically, it was like Mandy Moore or something like that. I think in the show,
something like that. Yeah.
But from that point on, he never viewed relationships the same.
Yeah.
Because he lost the one because he never went through that trauma and stuff like that. But
and I think really the thing to really work on overcoming the challenges is to be more open about what those challenges are.
Yeah.
You know, with kids, they're getting exposed younger. You know, parents are. I have parents that talk to me occasionally because I don't see young teenagers. I see older teenagers as clients. But there are parents sometimes that are like, "What do I do? How do I? You know, I found my kid watching this stuff. How do I stop them? Talk about it.
Yeah.
Talk to them. You know, be open and honest with them. Tell them why viewing can become a dangerous thing, but don't shame and guilt them because they're interested or because they have a sex drive. That is normal.
Yeah.
It's being honest and open about the whole process, about love, about connection, all those things. That's the best way to do it. And then having healthy boundaries and teaching healthy boundaries with your kids.
Yeah. I mean, that really, really is. I mean, I think that's the one thing that in that same sociology class, that was one of those key points is the reason all those stats are so low in those other countries is because they are honest with their kids. Yeah. I mean, studies have shown when your kid comes up and asks you a question, no matter what age, that means they're ready to hear about it. Now you could censor it a little bit, but you're still giving him the gist, So if your kid's 4 years old and comes up and it's like, "What is sex?" Then you tell them, because if you don't,
you don't tell them explicitly.
Yeah, you tell them, well, it's what you do to make babies or something. Well, I don't know. It's up to you. But the whole point is, when your kid does come to you for a question and you say because or just whatever or blow them off, then they are subconsciously learning that they cannot come to you to learn things. And where are they going to go? Internet, social media.
Like with my kids, when I was raising my kids when they were younger, I would teach them the bathing suit rule. Because when they were younger, it's like you don't want to be too explicit because they're not at the age where they may understand kind of, but you got to teach to the level, right? There's a reason why the military has technical manuals written at an 8th grade level.
Well, that's pretty high because a standard person reads it at 5th grade level.
But it was anything covered by a bathing suit, you don't let anybody look at, talk about, or touch unless it's a doctor with mom and dad's permission or mom and dad because we need to for some medical thing, right? Simple.
Yeah,
because they know what gets covered. As they got older, then it would be a little bit more, like I would warn them because my daughters are beautiful young women, and it's like I know what guys are like, so you got to be careful. And I would increase the detail a little bit more, so that they understood. And then ultimately, it's like because I knew about sex and stuff. Like I said, I was exposed at 7. I knew by the time I was 10 what everything was, but
I actually had Vivid. His daughter was in our class, and so my biggest exposure, we went over there and there was like a whole setup like this in the basement and everything, and just rows and rows and rows of VHSs.
Wow.
She's like, "Hey, you want to watch a movie?"
Wow.
And she flat out, she was like, I think we were 4th grade, and she literally was like, "Hey, you want to try that?" And I had no idea. I'm like, wait, what? That does what?
Right. That's actually kind of scary.
But ultimately,
that's where my
I heard down the
dogmatic
road
religious perspective comes
in. Oh, I know. Yeah. But the cool thing is down the road when the dad realized the trauma that I'll say the trauma, the disregard for relationships and intimacy that his daughter had from it just being casually in the house all the time. he sold the company and moved on, and basically like worked his ass off to like get her to understand, no, this is not normal. This is just was me making money.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people out there that because they accept it so easily and it's so available, and it's almost like this excuse, like, well, they're going to learn about it anyway, so might as well,
Yeah.
and so you have these kids being exposed younger and younger, sometimes just by their parents.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of issues long term that creates, and so there's definitely a caution, of you don't want to expose too much too soon, but at the same time we do need to be more open and talk
Yeah.
about it so that we take some of the stigma and the shame and guilt off of it, because that becomes a driving force.
Well,
So-
we appreciate you guys joining us today. I know
Yeah.
it's kind of a topic that, like I said, we wanted to start off with a bang.
Yeah.
Hit it hard
That's what
and
she
drive
said.
it home.
Yeah.
Joe, I hope you learned something today. More than anything, just how that does affect maybe if your dad that has a or dad and mom has an issue with the kid watching a lot of her thing. Maybe get a way to break it down and show it to them.
Yeah.
Not this, but just basically help have a better understanding of how it works in the brain, how it affects emotionally and physically, and
if you're in a relationship where that's something that is interfering, talk, communicate, try to understand and work on it together. That can be such a connecting and building thing in the relationship once it's overcome. But,
yeah, and I just tell people, man, if you're finding your relationships going stagnant because it's just been 10, 15 years, man, there's those cute little games you buy where you do a scratch off and you do whatever it suggests. I think those are one of those things that's really bonding and building a relationship, because it puts you in an uncomfortable place. You both agree to try these sort of things. There's never anything crazy like, go get a squirrel or something. But
I think in a committed long-term relationship, should be willing to try just about anything once. But as soon as somebody says they're not comfortable,
almost anything.
I said just about, right? But as soon as somebody says I'm not comfortable with that, it's off the table.
Safe words.
Yep.
No.
All right, 2026. We'll see how this one goes.
Stay classy, Kansas City. Go Bears.